Welcome back to the channel. My name is Brad, and today is sweet tea. Well, not really sweet tea. It is coffee today. I'm not sitting outside today because it is windy. And for those new to the channel, this is where Brad just kind of talks about different things that's on his mind, give you some nuggets of insight that maybe I've learned from reading this week. Don't know, never know what Brad is going to say. But the first thing we're going to say is Brad's relationship with his wife. So my wife said, "Hey, we'll make some coffee. You can have coffee during your talk today." And she said, "4 cups." I said, "Oh no, you need to make 6 cups because it's even." She goes, "But four is also even." And I said, "Well, make it 5 because you're odd." And she caught the joke. Anyway, nothing got thrown at me, and I am still in one piece. So a little bit of coffee for me, and no bruises because I said she was kind of odd. But that's okay. We're going to talk about some of our conversations we had this morning at breakfast also. So this morning at breakfast, we talked about different things, life. We talked about travel, and was she really a gypsy? And she said Gypsy was her middle name because we have moved so much in our lifetime, either through corporate travel or through visiting all these different places or going to Europe. And we've done all that stuff while we were younger. We're traveling now still as we are still younger. I'm retired now, which is awesome. Well, retired. Somebody said the hardest working retirement person I know on a comment the other day, because I do like making videos. I like making Excel spreadsheets. I do not like to spell. For those out there that caught all the spelling mistakes over the years, right? Or at least the last 8 months. I have never been a good speller, ever. And I should type it into a Word document to make sure the little squiggly red line is not underneath before I copy and paste it in. But no, I'm too lazy to do that sometimes. That's because that's what retired people sometimes do. They're like, it's close enough. But anyway, I'm going to start correcting that. I am going to start typing it into Word. Make sure, because that's how I actually did my whole entire I did not go to college. Here's a nugget for you. I did not go to college until there was a computer that did spell check. There you go. I couldn't even type. Just imagine me typing with all the little whiteout, correcting all the little spelling issues. I would have never been able to graduate. Now, with the computer, at least in Word, you can type it in and it gives you a little squiggly line. I do not like Excel because in Excel, it doesn't show you that you misspelled. Oh, you actually have to go hit the spell check in Excel. That's okay. And there's a whole thing to this. So when I was working in corporate world, there was one time I was sitting in a meeting and there was a lot of people, and I bring out my laptop and I start typing. And the presenter was actually my boss, and he called me out that I was rude for interrupting him during the meeting. And he had this big slide up, right, talking about how he presented this to the CEO, and the CEO got a copy of this poster put in his office. And I looked at it and said, "Well, I'm not the best speller in the world." And before I wanted to say something, "Do you know you misspelt?" That was the end of the meeting because there was a huge spelling error right on the poster. And everybody so close to it, and it was so busy, didn't pick up on it. So it's always easy to critique others when you're sitting there looking at it. It's a whole lot different when you're actually so close to something. And that's what we need to do sometimes, especially in these volatile markets. We are so close, following the markets so hard, day in and day out, looking at your account 8 times a day, and you're just getting all nervous. So one thing that I have decided to do personally is I turned drip on several of the funds. Just going to drip them. Just the business development companies I just started they're small babies, not going to give me very much per month anyway. I just turned them on a drip. Why not? I'm growing these for the future, so I just placed them on drip. That will be in Monday's video. I've already got the slides done. It's going to be the 500K, what did it pay me? And I'm going to go through some of the holdings also and some of the thinkings of there. I mean, I really like some of the baby bonds that are coming out, and I might be looking more at that just because it's more stable, but that is just me. I do have a portfolio that's, I'll just throw this out, it's averaging 14.5% in return on cost. And that's another one. I use current cost. So when I reinvest distributions, a lot of people go, oh no, it's off your original cost. No, 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 no. Those distributions that I reinvested, that's cost too, because I could have used those dollars and invested in something else. So everything is accounted for on cost. So I'm living on 8, reinvesting the rest, and I'm reinvesting 7 something. All right, is that right? Somebody correct me on that. But if I'm reinvesting 6.5, had to think about that in my brain while I'm still talking. So 6.5% back in, I'm getting a pay raise every single month. And that is just how I'm doing it. Doesn't mean that's how you have to do it, because there's all things that are curious. I mean, I think I watched a Neos, one of the people in Facebook pointed out there was a new Neos video by another YouTuber. So I went and watched it. I like those guys and how they present things. One thing that was pointed out that, hey, Neos only wrote on 68% of the portfolio instead of 75% of the portfolio due to the volatility. So they're still targeting that 12%. And that was another conversation. They're still targeting 12%. But instead of writing the calls farther out or farther in, which is all their options, they got to write it on a percentage of the portfolio less. So not as much of the portfolio is written on. So if it does hit those strikes, they can capture more upside. That's exactly what we all keep on talking about is NAV erosion. There was an article or a comment made by Stephen Bavaria from the Income Factory, and he talked about CLOs and CLO equities, to be exact, and a particular fund that clearly has NAV erosion. And his comment was, look at total returns. What they get into is they have to absorb the losses and pay you the gains. They're not netting it out, and that's just because of how they're structured. So structure even matters with CLOs. And he's been in the credit industry for years. So look at total returns, not always price. And he talked about how he has gone through multiple credit cycles, because there's cycles in credit just like there's cycles in equities. And always total returns works out if you don't get out. And that's why I am staying in my income. We have CLOs, we have business development companies, covered calls, and some alternatives. Even though somebody pointed out my alternatives is just like a junk box, that's probably very true, because that's where I hold BTCI and things like that. And I still believe in Bitcoin. I'm looking at some gold funds, but I got 3 now, and I'm waiting for Neos to come out, and I will be looking at all 4 gold funds just to see how they're doing. And you may or may not want to be in a gold fund, but it's one of those interesting alternatives, maybe a safer play to treasuries. Somebody asked me about getting into treasuries, and I pointed out that the article written by the chairman of economics that is advisor to Trump said that they wanted to take treasuries down 20%. I do believe that's the wording. I'll leave a link to the article down below. And this was written before he was actually appointed to office. And then he actually points out who the Secretary of the Treasury was going to be in the article, which is the Secretary of the Treasury today. And they're talking about debasing those treasuries. So my comment is, I got out of all treasuries. I'm going to wait until this all blows past and see what they do. There's no reason to put anything at risk. When you read the paper, they talk about debasing treasuries, and that's really, hey, they're selling you something that's worth $100, and they say, well, we're not going to pay you back $100. We're only going to pay you back $80, and they can do that. It's called defaulting on your debt, but hey, they can do whatever they want to do, and hopefully that's not what they do, but that's what they want to do. They want to debase it. They want to come out with what they even call war treasuries or war bonds, which is really interesting, saying that, hey, everybody's using us for protection for the military, so you're going to have to buy our 50-year or 100-year bonds at X amount of interest rate, and that will buy you military protection. Don't know if that's the best way personally, but that's what they were talking about on those lines. Uh, I just don't know. I have mixed feelings about that, but if NATO's not going to come to the table and pay their fair share, then I can see where something like that comes into play. That, hey, you know what? We'll do the heavy lifting for you, but you're going to pay us for it or finance our debt, which is part of the problem. We overspend. And that was another part of the conversation this morning over coffee at the breakfast table. I asked my wife, one, why didn't you come onto the channel? And she kind of laughed at me. Well, she didn't laugh. She goes, well, what would we talk about? I said, well, I could just ask you questions. So we talked about what made us successful. And she goes, frugal living. That was one of her comments. Frugal living was the way that she was raised. Frugal living was something that's not so much how I was raised when I was younger, but as I got older, it became very, very apparent that having frugal living styles allows you to do other things because we like to travel. We would not have been able to afford going over to Europe every other year when we first got married to see the in laws when we were overspending. Uh, don't have credit card debt. I mean, we do put everything on a credit card and then we balance that out, but that is something that we have. Debt, we do not have. That's something that we've avoided pretty much all of our lives. Yeah, we've had some car payments here and there, but we always paid them off early. Just that, hey, we needed a car now. We got the car, we paid it off early, and got out of debt within 6, 8 months. Take the truck that I own. Yes, I had debt on the truck for 2 months, and that's just waiting for the money to come in. You can say, well, you could have waited 2 months. Yeah, but there was a whole thing of where we were at in our life. We needed the truck now, but we knew we had money coming in 2 months. So we just allocated and we budget. That's another one. I don't do a formal budget, but we know approximately what we're going to spend every single month on a credit card, and we can see way out into the future. So the comment comes into, you should be doing some type of budgeting, especially after 4 or 5 months of budgeting. You can probably become like me, going, okay, I know that my expenses are $2,000, $3,000 a month, rent, electricity, whatever you have, and then you have a mindset of exactly how much you have coming in every month. But you need to get into that habit. And another one I keep on running into, and I keep on shaking my head. Uh, I don't know why people didn't take advantage of their 401ks or IRAs. I mean, everybody keeps on saying, well, taxable account, taxable account, taxable account. You realize when you put money into your IRA and they give you 100%. I was 100% matched. So I put $1,000 in, they gave me $1,000, and now I had $2,000. And I worked for a big enough company that was they did it through Fidelity, and I was allowed to have Fidelity brokerage. That allowed me to go ahead and move things out of what they had as their picks. And they did a very good job of picking funds. And I was able to move out of those and put them into funds that I liked. Not everybody has that opportunity, but that's what I did. So please take advantage of your 401ks. Somebody made a comment about rule of 55, and I kind of said, hey, you need to go talk to a lawyer, because what I have found out is rule of 55 does not apply to every single 401k out there. That is done by the company, the brokerage firm, and everything else. So there is a lot of rules of rule of 55. That also gets you into T72, taking T72 early out of your IRAs. There's a lot of rules to those things that I did not do. Yes, I'm paying a penalty, but if I decide to change my distributions, let's say I decided to go back to work or take a little part-time job or do something else, you can't change your distributions of the T72 for 5 years. And it doesn't matter if you hit 59 and a half or not. So let's say I'm 57 and a half, almost 58. I sit there and I start making more money from something. Doesn't matter how I do it. And I said, hey, I'm going to reduce my distributions. Well, you can't do it. If you started T72s, you are stuck for 5 years, no matter what. So I decided not to do it that way, because the amount of penalties it actually ended up being wasn't enough to discourage me. So it's giving me that opportunity. Now, one thing is, I am domiciled in a state that does not pay state income tax. So that really helps me out. Now, they do have sales tax. So anytime I order something from Amazon, I'm paying sales tax. But that's a totally different story. And their sales tax is a little bit higher than other places, but okay. So my income is not charged, but anything I buy through Amazon or places like that and gets sent to me by mail, I got to pay taxes on. That gets into a totally different story for a totally different date. So hopefully you enjoyed this. I don't know what else I'm going to tell you. I'm going to tell you that I don't know where the market's going. I think that we're going to go sideways for a long ways. Larry Fink talked about recession and recession fears. And I am not a big fan of fear. I do not think we're going to have a very deep recession if we ever do go into a recession, because we are still quantitative tightening. They're going to pump money into the system to get us out of that very quickly. And you can see that's a gameplay. You don't think Powell and Trump are on the same page, but let's face it, Powell and the rest of these guys are, they're talking. They do. You don't know what they're saying to each other. They see where the plan is going. They're just playing the fence of, oh, we don't talk about policies. Yeah, okay. You know that they're talking. That's just like insider trading. You know the government's insider trading. I mean, all you gotta do is look at these guys and how they buy Nvidia right before we're gonna give money to the chip manufacturers. Yeah, okay. You know how that worked for us. There was also a whole, in my Facebook group, somebody posted something about, uh, it was on, it wasn't TikTok, it was one of those other ones, but you could take $1,000 and turn it into 1.2 million. Well, they couldn't do options trading very well. So we'll just say that, hey, it was very difficult to do something like that. And by the way, if it didn't work correctly, you just lost $1,000, because they were talking about buying puts. Oh yeah, or it was buying a put, it was buying a call. But if you would have bought this call out of the money and the price shot up, you would have. Yeah, okay. One, you were buying it naked because $1,000 doesn't buy you a whole lot of QQQ. Just saying, right? You can't just say, "Oh, yeah, you could have bought this." Yeah, okay. And you did not do a cash secured. You were just out there, and they said anybody can do that. So no, you need to have level 3 or level 4. I forget which one trading it is to do naked calls and puts, and they shouldn't be giving that out to everybody. This actually should be a test for that. I really do. I think you should have to take a class and get certified. But that's here and there. I think it should be free or low cost, $20 to take the tests. You can go in and demonstrate your knowledge. And really, there's so much free stuff out there that you can learn this stuff in not a long period of time. But you should take a test before you can just get certified to do that. That's just nonsense. Well, anyway, I am just rambling and I'm going to not waste your time. Hopefully, you are out there and being safe. It's a little cloudy and rainy here. That's the reason I'm not outside today. But until next time, God bless.